get more information about various opportunities, the employment opportunities and pathways in the United States, where we'll be discussing about the CPT, OPT, and H-1B visa application proceedings. We have a panelist on board today. Hayodeji, I know, will be taking us through the H-1B session, while Imobong Hassan will be taking us through the OPT and the CPT application proceedings. Before we commence, we'd like to introduce ANSA to you to tell you all about what Association of Nigerian Scholars in America is all about. What do we stand for? What is our mission? And what is our vision? To do that, I would like to bring on board Sebastian Oguka, who is one of the executive board member of ANSA. Sebastian, thank you for joining. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Danny, for that. So, ANSA is just the Association of Nigerian Scholars in America, and basically what we do is we are a non-profit organization with a strong commitment to build a network of Nigerian students here in America. Um, we try as much as we can to connect Nigerians in various institutions here in the United States of America and just form a body, network, help pass relevant information like, what we're about to do today. We also provide scholarships and fellowships to intending scholars. That's people that are intending to study in Nigeria. We also, have social events to connect Nigerian scholars here in America and all that. So this events, the events today, the OPT, CPT, and H-1B visas. This is just one of the events. This is just a similar event. We have more things we do, to connect Nigerian scholars here in Nigeria and also intending scholars in America. So our website is www.ansaofficial.org. You can go there and check out our activities, our mission, vision, and every other information you need to know about ANSA. With that said, I would like to pass the baton to Glory to.
Thank you so much, Sebastian, for
Yep.
the nice introduction about ANSA. Basically, Sebastian has said it all. ANSA is actually a non-profit here in the United States where we try to see to the professional and even the professional, academic, and social welfare of Nigerian students in the United States or those that are coming here to even study. Uh, that's basically what we do, and we also have uh, opportunities for people to join us. I mean, you can join to become members and also volunteers in various social groups that we have in ANSA. We'd love to have you. And if you like to join ANSA, you can check our website at ansaofficial.org. Yeah, thank you. So basically, we'll be moving to the next phase where we'll be discussing the major talk point for today. First, we would like to start with the CPT and the OPT application proceedings, and Gloria Assam will be taking us through that. Uh, I don't know if AY would like to share the slides, or would you like me to present the slide from my hand?
You can go ahead.
Okay, let me see if I can do that. Yeah, please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. And thanks for having me, Dami. And I told you my new name is Olainka, not Asa.
Oh, sorry.
Well, thanks for having me here and really excited to share. The agenda for today would be on the CPT and OPT, which I'll be covering. Next slide, please. So the outline for my presentation today would include the CPT overview, the OPT overview, the application timeline process, and the reporting requirements. And we would obviously take questions after AY is done with his own session. The next slide, please. Okay, I'll be starting off with the eligibility requirements and authorization. So for most of us as international students, there are little things that we obviously have to put into consideration to obviously ensure that we're eligible to be able to apply for our work authorization while here in the US. So I would start off with the eligibility requirements, which would include ensuring that you're a full-time student, ensuring that you're making your normal progress towards graduation. You'd also ensure that you're in good standing with your school because you would need them to be able to give you the approval to obviously get your work authorization. You would also need to ensure that you're in good standing with the USCIS folks, the immigration folks. And for you to apply, you would also need to make sure that you've completed one full academic year, which obviously includes the fall semester and the spring semester. And as regards authorization, I thought it would be good for folks to obviously understand that you would, for the OPT, you would require the approval from USCIS folks, and you would need to obtain an EAD card to be able to resume at your place of work. And for your CPT, you literally just need the faculty in your school and the students, international students organization, the office or the admissions office, depending on what it's called in your your respective schools, sorry. You would obviously need them to be able to give the approval and obviously issue you the new I-20 for you to resume at the place of work. The next slide, please. Then for the CPT, there are obviously some requirements which we would have to just make sure we follow through and not get into trouble. You have to understand that you have a maximum of 20 hours to work. You need to have completed one full academic year. You have to be enrolled full-time as a full-time student, not as a part-time student. You have to also get your faculty to understand that you're taking this course either as an internship course and or a practicum project, which you would also put as part of your coursework overall towards your graduation. You would also have to get the letter from your faculty and your employer as well that they've offered you the employment. You would also need to reach out to your school for them to issue you a new I-20 for you to be able to resume at the new place of work. And the good thing about the CPT is the fact that it actually allows you to work for a whole year. But the clause here is when you work for the whole year, it might actually affect your eligibility for the OPT. So it's always something to put into consideration, the duration you'd actually want to work for. Next slide, please. I'll be giving a deep dive on the OPT because I actually had, I'm currently on the OPT stuff, and I would obviously be able to share my experience and use myself as the case study here. So just starting off, what is the OPT? The optional practical training is an employment benefit for F1 students who have maintained their status. And you would also want to put into consideration that the job you're looking for, which you would obviously want to use your EAD card for, has to be related to your field of study. You're allowed to work for up to 1 year per degree level, and it's also commensurate with your educational level, meaning if you graduate with your BSc, you're allowed to obviously apply for the OPT. If you want to, let's say you had your OPT you try to get your H1 and that didn't work out, and you decide to go for your master's, yes, you're obviously allowed to apply again for your OPT. If you also try the H1 and it doesn't work out and you decide to go back to school for your PhD, yes, you can obviously apply for the OPT once again, and you would obviously be considered and be granted the permission to work. So I just wanted to put that there so guys can know, because I obviously understand that things that have been really difficult for people. So you could also just note this down and you know what to work towards. Next slide, please. There are also 3 types of OPT. There's the pre-completion OPT, which you have to start and finish prior to your time for graduation. There's the post-completion OPT, and this is would I say the most common one, which like most people file while in school and like towards their graduation date, and they tend to get the EAD and start working upon graduation. Then there's the STEM extension OPT, which it's just for students that are in the science, technology, engineering, and maths field. So it's like the extra 2 years that is given to the initial post-completion OPT, which is for 1 year. So obviously it gives enough time to file your H1 and regularize your status or adjust your status, whichever path you would follow henceforth. Next slide, please. For the pre-completion OPT, I just wanted to set out the requirements which you would have to put into consideration. You're still on OPT while you file this, but there's still a clause. You can only work for 20 hours because you're an international student, and because you're still doing your normal coursework, you'd have to just abide by that. Like I mentioned, you can still work for a whole year, but now the clause with this is if you worked for like 2 months and you want to apply for the post-completion, you wouldn't be entitled to a full year again for the post-completion, as the time frame you worked with this would be deducted eventually from the post-completion one. So you'd also have to put that into consideration. So I would say it's better off to apply for the CPT while being a student, then ensure you have like the full year allocated to you for the post-completion OPT. And obviously, for you to be able to apply, you must have completed 1 full academic year, and you need to get the approval from your school, the international office, and the USCIS as well. Next slide, please. For the post-completion OPT, which a lot of people apply for prior to graduation, you're entitled to 1 year, the 12-month limit. You are also required to apply 90 days prior to graduation and 60 days post-graduation. Anyways, I'll give a deep dive on this using my own case as a case study so folks can like really understand stuff. Then they would also say the start date has to be like 60 days after you've graduated, maximum of 90 days of unemployment, that ESS wants you to always report that you're working somewhere. And for folks who probably could not get a job, they would like want to, would I say, volunteer somewhere just to make sure that they're actually reporting stuff. They would also say, oh, the requirement is for you to ensure that the work you're doing is in your current field of study or is related to it, because USCIS would always ask, what was this role? What do you actually do? What would you be doing there? Stuff like that. So they would also want you to know who your employer is, the employer's address, your home address. Your school would also want to know. So you have to also report that to the international office and USS as well. Next slide, please. And yes, you also have to work full time for, yeah. Then the STEM extension, OPT, this is it's literally a requirement for STEM students. If you do not do like a STEM course, this would not apply to you. You also have to put into consideration that your employer has to be e-verified. There's a website, and I think there's like a number they give to companies. So you have to be able to obtain that. you have your 12-month extension. You have to also report your employer like you were doing when you were on your post-completion. And another thing about this is you have to ensure that you file early enough prior to the completion of your post-completion OPT. So let's say you started off in January and you were supposed to like get done by December. Probably by September, October, you should have put in an application for the extension so that give your CIS enough time. And well, you give them enough time, and I think you have to obviously like put in more documents because initially when you filed your post-completion OPT, you probably didn't like submit any degree certificates to prove that, oh, you actually graduated, because they obviously granted you the work authorization prior to your graduation. So in this case, you have to just probably put in more things to be able to file, like maybe your degree certificate and other things that you feel would like add some value to your application. Yeah. Next slide, please. And for the F1 students, there are lots of things you have to just put into consideration when you want to file. And for this, I'm actually specifically pointing to the post-completion OPT, just ensuring that you've maintained your status, you're physically in the US at the time you want to file, ensuring that at least you're going to pursue maybe an employment opportunity, it's related to your field. You have to like just check to make sure that you haven't like gone over the stipulated time for the CPT, and you haven't obviously applied for the OPT on the same degree level. So if you applied previously for your bachelor's, now you have to apply, let's say for a master's or a step ahead for you to be offered. You obviously do not need a job offer to be able to apply for the OPT. And you have to make sure you're graduating that semester you're applying. Next slide, please. Okay, for the application process, I'll use myself here as the case study. My graduation date was May 22nd, 2021, and the earliest date for me to have applied was February 2021. And I obviously, I read through all the requirements, and I had an issue. My employment wasn't going to start off until September 2021. So that was going to obviously go past the 90 days rule and 60 days rule. So what I did was to delay my application date. And I calculated it. I was graduating by May, and my resumption date was September 21st, 2021. There was it 21st or 27th, I can't remember now. Thereabouts. And I now thought to myself, I said, if I file this really early by May or April, the card will come out early and it will go past the 60 days or 90 days unemployment period. So what I did was to literally delay my application period and also push my start date. So I would take you through that. And I also want to speak on the new I-20, because for the OPT, you also need to get some clearance from your school, and the international office will have to issue you a new I-20, which you would use for this new application. And you obviously need to be in good standing with your school for them to be able to issue you that. So that's also one of the requirements. Next slide, please. So when I had realized, okay, my graduation date was May 22nd and my possible start date was going to be May 23rd, the earliest start date rather, and the latest start date was going to be July 21st. When I was filing, I ensured that I put my start date as July 21st. So that was going to now give me a longer period, like the 90 days rule, so that my employment start date was still going to fall within that period. So that was what I did. But when people see, oh, it's saying 60 days, 90 days, whatever, the thing about the USCIS is when you file, they would, your work authorization doesn't start counting until the day it's actually approved. So let's say it was approved August 15th, then obviously my 60 or 90 days unemployment stuff started counting. And by September, I was obviously good because I was still within that period. So it's just something to put into consideration, because you hear people say, oh, file early, but you have to put yourself in, like, okay, what's my situation? I already knew my situation, so I couldn't file like February, March, April, or May like others did. So when people were talking about filing, I'll just mute because I already knew my situation, and in order not to go out of status. So then another thing I would like people to note is the form types. They usually like update them, and they usually have different versions. So you have to always make sure that when filing, you're using the, what I say, the most current and the one that USCIS actually stipulates that they want you to submit. You can also apply for a social security card if you initially didn't have one. And okay, like for me, I wasn't really working in school up until the last semester. So I had to make sure I got a job so I could like get my social security card and be able to do my background checks for school. Give me 1 second. So sorry, having too cold. So I had to apply for a job early enough so that I could get my social security number and my card prior to even like resuming at work, because obviously we know background checks are one of like the mandatory things employers would obviously request for. But if you do not have one, or you didn't have one while like in school, you can always still apply for one while you're making your application for the OPT, and it would come, I think, couple of weeks post when they've granted your work authorization. The next slide, please. Another thing you would always want to note, if you're filing, like you're sending your application via courier service, it's very important for you to include the electronic notification request form. It's mandatory because when you send out your application, you want to be able to track it and to know when USCIS has actually received it. Yes, the courier service would let you know that, oh yes, they've what I say, they delivered it and you get notification. But you also want to know that, okay, yes, USCIS actually has my application and they will be working on it. So it's mandatory to fill out this form for you to get that notification via text or email. I got mine via text. So I would just say, if you're filing the hard copy and you want to actually send it in, it's mandatory you do that. Then the responsibilities form is one of the requirements, because your school would say, oh, they need to make sure that you're in touch. And if you change your status or you change your house address, you change your employer, anything at all changes other than what they already had in file, you need to make sure they're updated and everything is intact at every point in time, because they'll always tell you, oh, they need to let USCIS know what's going on and all. Next slide, please. Then as regards the documents you'll be needing, the I-20s, for me, I added, or rather everyone is meant to add like the I-20 you used when you were filing your, like while in Nigeria, the I-20 that was initially issued to you, you add like all the new ones you've gotten up until the new one that was issued for the OPT application. You have to combine every single thing together. You'd also add your data page for your passport, your visa page, a copy of it. You would also have to print out the I-94, the latest version. For me, I printed it out a few days prior to my when I sent out my application. You would also have to include the EAD card. So if you had any other EAD, like let's say the pre-completion OPT EAD card, you have to make sure you're including it like a copy there so that they would know, okay, yes, you had worked previously, because they already know all these things, but it's important for them to have everything documented like in place so that when they check every single thing, nothing is missing. So it's really, really important. And when you're submitting your application, it's always good to reach out to your school, like the international office. They might have a service where you can send in the form that you filled for them to like look through it. It's just like a second opinion. So you have, because you have some areas where you're not meant to fill, or for some folks, because some pages on the whole form, would I say blank? Some folks say, oh, they're not going to add them to the whole pile. But no, that's actually wrong. You're meant to like put everything through. And I got guidance from my own school as well when it was time for me to apply. Next slide, please. When putting documents together, just always make sure that you have like a set of like would I say checklist that you're working with, just to make sure that there's nothing missing, and always get to like check up on them and everything. For me, I had to take a new set, like the passport photograph, I took a new set just to make sure that everything was okay. And maybe USC, I think, have any of the old copies prior to my application. I just wanted to make sure everything was intact. I also got my money order via Western Union. Then I sent mine via UPS. But these days, you can still file online. And there's actually a website which I added to this slide, the OPT timeline. It's what I would, let me put it this way, it's like an inside scoop as regards what's actually going on, like with USCIS. You would get to like know the amount of applications they've approved, the time frame, and you also get to see, would I say, live version of other people's, because they'll put their comments and oh, they're like, oh, I applied since February, it's July, I haven't seen anything. So it kind of gives you an inside scoop of like what's going on there. And you also want to know where exactly you're meant to send your application to. So your school is meant to let you know the location. For me, it was Chicago. So you can always find out from your school where you're meant to send to. Sorry, Dami, next slide.
Okay.
I put some tips here, just what I say, just for you to take into consideration as regards applying early, making sure you're graduating before you apply for the OPT, and prior to waiting for your card, you should have been searching for jobs and just making sure you're putting yourself out there. And as regards the mailing address, for students, sometimes people don't have like the permanent addresses, or like, oh, okay, they're just in school for duration of the semester and they're going to obviously travel to go stay with family. It's best to always put the address of that relative that has a permanent address as the delivery address, so you don't run into issues. Because these USPS folks that usually deliver stuff, they can afford to return the card and say, oh, we're not able to deliver this card, and that would just give you lots of issues. So it's always good to be smart about the delivery address. Next slide, please. Then as regards the reporting requirements, you just have to make sure you're like in touch with the international students office or international education office, whatever your school refers that. You just make sure you're sending, as soon as you get your EAD card, make sure you're sending the card, a copy of the card, a copy of your employment letter, a copy of the, I think the email that you would get, because as soon as your EAD is approved, your school would obviously reach out to you and say, oh, okay, we need this, we need that. It just depends, but you just have to make sure that's up to date. And there's also a website which you would get, they'll tell you, oh, you need to put in your Like for me, I had to put in my place of work. I currently work at IBM and I studied energy management and systems technology. My current job role is, I'll put it this way, it's not really, I don't do like physical work, it's more of like technology, but I had to kind of like fine tune my stuff to fit what I studied. I'm currently a consultant and I work with like the E&U team, energy and utility, telecoms, media and entertainment. So I obviously had to put that with the energy and utility, whatever stuff, to obviously fit that requirement literally so that I wouldn't run into trouble. So you have to just learn how to like navigate stuff and just be smart about it so you don't like run into trouble. And just always like update the website as often as things change on your end. Next slide, please. And as regards the travel guidance, we're all told that it's not really advisable to travel. Some folks would say, oh, they want to like apply for the visa. That's not really advisable, I would say, because if you think back when you were talking to the VO and you were asked, what are you coming to the US for? You literally just said, oh, I'm coming here to study, and upon graduation, I'll be going back to my country to help with this, or I have a job that I'm going back to. Those were obviously the stories we told. So I think it's just smarter and better to be on the safe side to remain in the country till you've obviously upgraded to H1 or you've adjusted like some other way so that you don't run into trouble. But if at all you still want to move forward, just ensure that you have like the travel signature on your I-20, you have your EAD card, and you have like your offer letter or the letter stating that you're going on leave from work within a stipulated time and all. That's like what I would recommend. And I think the worst thing you can actually do is travel while your application is just still with like USCIS and they haven't like approved it. I think it's really not advisable. So I like wouldn't recommend you do that. Next slide, please. Yeah, and question, yes, and as international students, people always say, oh, like the money is not sufficient, stuff like that. I'll just say, be careful. Like, don't work if you do not have like proper authorization. Just make sure you're doing the right thing so you're not going to run into trouble. If at all you want to do anything, just do your thing and make sure you don't get caught. The Lord be with you. Next slide, please. Yes, and I'll be closing with this. Apply everywhere, big or small companies, and go on Google. There are lists of companies that would actually take folks down OPT. Some companies will say, oh, like they just want citizens or residents or whatever. You can push those ones aside, attend conferences, go like NESB, WSE, this Afrotech, like for the chemical folks, there's so many conferences you can actually go to, like the PhD students, they always have like lots of conferences they go to, they meet lots of like big people, industry folks, always network, even your professors in school, they could obviously be like leads for good jobs. Apply early, make sure you have um, your resume out there. You could always have like different types of resumes to fit the different job descriptions. Don't go with a generic resume. It wouldn't really help you. You always have to tailor your resume to fit what the role requires. So far you have like the skill set, you should be able to like navigate through. And also I included the OPT timeline. If you go on that link, I think it's like a Facebook link, stuff like that. You'd actually see folks that it would actually show you, okay, you applied to so date. These are number of folks that have actually received within the period you applied. It kind of helps to quench the anxiety that people would have when they've applied and, oh, they're not hearing anything. You'd actually see some folks on there lamenting because they will say, oh, they applied in February and this is, I'm just saying, this is September. Oh, I haven't heard anything. Some people would say, oh, they're actually approving the receipt dates from that and they stopped. They moved to so date, and you would actually just know where you stand. And if you need to start reaching out to, like USA has to say, oh, I haven't heard, like, what's going on. Just ensure you also build your network, ask questions, and just always make sure you're in status. Thanks for listening, and I hope I was able to convey some stuff, and I'll pass it on to Aya now. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Imvong, for the awesome presentation. You've really given us a lot of materials. I'm sure that we're able to also capture a lot of information from your presentation. I would like to say that for the audience that are currently in the meeting, you can always drop your questions in the chat box, and we'll attend to them later. Also, we'll give time for people to join the conversation and ask their questions. Yeah. So we'll be moving to the next phase, which we'll be talking about the H-1B visa application proceedings and what it entails. And I'll be bringing up Ayodele Jaino, the current ANSA president and a geologist by training, to take us on this section. I'm going to show my slides. Yeah, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dami. And thank you, Imamong, for the very comprehensive and informative session on CPT and OPT. I guess anybody who is interested in doing that should come to this presentation and they'll have all they need. So this session is on the H-1B visa, and I know we don't really have so much time, so I'm just gonna breeze through it while I point out the key things that you should know. Next slide, please. All right, so what is the H-1B visa? Basically, the key thing we should take away here is that the initial processes of the H-1B visa is usually the sole responsibility of your employer. It is your employer that is responsible for registering you in the lottery and starting the application process. And the later end would be your sole responsibility, which involves you going to stamp your visa at the US consulate or the embassy of your home country. So basically, this visa is it's a non-immigrant visa, work visa, enables you to work in the US, get hired by a US employer, any employer domiciled in the US, typically for high-skilled jobs. And then it enables you to remain and work in the US for up to 6 years. So initially you get 3 years from your initial petition, and you have the ability to extend that for a maximum period of 3 years. So that's 6 years. And also, if you need to change your employer at any point in time, you have the opportunity to make amendments. So this will be done by your employer, not yourself. And also, H-1B is open to almost every field. Almost every field is not really limited to STEM, finance, medical field, and many more. You can actually participate in the H-1B visa. Next slide, please. So another important thing to note about H-1B visa is that it has a cap. Now, what do I mean by cap? Every year, the immigration sector brings out about 85,000 visas. And then this is divided into 2 different caps. We have the regular caps, basically for people who holds the bachelor's degree. They're entitled to apply to this cap, and people who have like master's degree and higher, let's say PhD, they have the extra advantage or additional opportunity to actually apply to the extra 20,000 visas available for them. So usually what your company will do is to apply you to the master's cap. If you do have both bachelor's and master's degree, you get applied to the master's cap. If you don't make that cap, then they can switch you over to the regular cap. So you have like a higher chance of getting in than somebody who has just bachelor's degree. Also, we should understand that this whole thing is just lottery. So it means it's not guaranteed. It is not first come, first served basis. So somebody who registered the first day of opening of this registration, and somebody who does it on the last day, I think you both stand the same chance. There's nothing like assessment of merit here. It is just a random selection. Let's just understand that. And if your registration is not successful, you have the chance to come back next year to reapply for the H-1B visa. And then there's something also what's to be noted here, that any institution or university or some other nonprofit entity that's related to like research organizations or even government research organizations are exempt from the H-1B cap. What does this mean? It means that they can apply to the H-1B visa anytime during the year. There is no restriction for cap. So these people can apply to as many visas as they want. But if you're not part of this category, you are restricted to the 85,000 cap that is available to you. Next slide, please. All right, so major eligibility basically would be for you to have an offer with a US employer, which is very important because they will be your sponsor. Also a US or equivalent foreign bachelor's or higher degree in your field of specialty. Like I said, these companies are sponsoring you for a reason, because you're highly skilled. You have something to bring to the table. So that is why they are going all the way out to sponsor you, and they're paying all the fees. So that is, those are the major eligibility requirements that is needed. And the timeline for H-1B registration typically begins in March. And applicants are expected to be notified towards the end of March and early April. For the registration, so there is an initial registration, which is getting you into the lottery, which begins in March. All you need to provide to your employer would be the list of the documents on the screen, you know, your bachelor's degree and certificates, transcripts, all of the I-20s you ever had, your most recent I-94, which shows your history of travels, your updated resume, international passport. Please and please, this passport must be valid. It must be valid. If it is not valid and you know you want to apply for H-1B visa, you should try to renew before you apply, because it is going to hold you back. You're not going to go through with the process if you don't. Current visa, it must not be, it is not necessarily compulsory for it to be valid, because we all know that once you go for your visa interview for F1, you get 2 years visa, and before you finish, sometimes your program runs for 3 years, your F1 visa expires. So they understand that. So yeah, there's no big deal about that. If you have your OPT and EAD card, fine, you can take that with you as well. Next slide, please. So once you've been selected, you get an email from your sponsor's attorney or representative. They tell you you've been selected. So what's next? What is next is for your sponsor to file a petition on your behalf to USCIS. And what that means is it involves two major applications. Then the first one is the labor condition application. And this is just to certify that your employer would pay you so amounts that is equivalent to your skill set and also equivalent to everybody on the same level working in that organization, right? So you're not supposed to be underpaid, all right? And I think this is actually good for employees, because I think it protects employees' interest as well. So there is Form I-129 petition for non-immigrant worker, and there is also support letter from your employer detailing the reason why they are sponsoring you for the visa. So for the process, you don't really need to worry a lot about this, because everything here on this slide will be handled by your employer. All you need is to provide the required documents needed of you. Next slide, please. So this is where you step in. All right, you've gotten your approval notice from USCIS. It is this form called, I think it's in the next slide, 979 or something. I will show you. But the first thing you do in preparation for your visa stamping is to complete the DS-160 form. So this form is what you complete when you're applying to any kind of visa at all. Complete the form, save and print the confirmation page is very important. Pay the visa application fees. It's currently at $190. Convert that to your country's currency. And then, so there are different payment procedures for different countries. So I don't know if the people on the call, other than Nigeria here, but you need to understand the procedure for payment for the application fees for your company. Always keep the payment receipt. This is very important. So after this, you go to US Travel Docs, book your appointment for visa. If you need to request emergency appointment, you can do that. Usually you should get that within 24 hours if there's the need for that. So the next thing is for you to prepare for your visa interview in person at your home country. So you need to travel back to your home country to do the visa interview. And this is just for you to come back in on a fresh visa, right? So H-1B is stamped on your passport and you're going to come into the country with that. That's the essence of traveling back. Next slide, please. All right, so for the documentation, please pay attention here. What is required of you at the US consulate or the embassy? The DS-160 confirmation is important. Visa payment receipt is important. Appointment confirmation letter is important. A valid passport, like I said earlier, is very important. Passport photograph, at least 2 of that. All of the forms you submitted to USCIS for H-1B processing, your approval notice, that is very important. The I-797 form, copy of approved I-129 petition, and the sponsor letter provided by your employer. One click, please. So supplementary documents, I think you should treat this as required as well. Sometimes they ask for some of this. Employer verification letter, which shows your employer history, employment history, old expired passport, just take that with you as well. Copies of educational documents used during your H-1B application. Payment stub, I've seen some people been asked for these. So just get payment stub from where you work in the last 3 months. Depending on your duration of stay as well, you can take some of these documents, your social security card, driver's license, on every other thing on this slide, your resume, all copies of your I-20. One click, please. All right, so the interview is not as serious as when you're going for F1 interview. So this is like, oh, tell us about your experience, your employment experience with your employer. How has it been working with this company and all that? So it's just like a chit chat, nothing serious. So don't panic or worry about that. And once you've been approved, your visa should be ready within 2 to 3 business days. One click, please. So upon arrival in the US, at the customs, you're required to show your approval notice, which is the I-79 and your visa stamp. I guess this concludes the whole process, and then you can come back and continue working with your employer. Next slide would be questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ayo, for the awesome presentation. I think this is clear and succinct. Right now, we'll be moving to the question and answer segment. I'd like to open the floor. Let's see if I can get access to the chat box. Let's see. Trying to access the chat box. I can find that. Okay. Also, if you have a question, you can raise your hand, and I can we can call you to ask your question, and then we'll provide answers to them. Okay, I think Steve has a question. So I think Steve, you can unmute yourself to ask your question right now.
Okay, I just wanted to say that the chat box is at the bottom right, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much, Steve, for bringing me, to the consciousness of that. I think Olanrewaju raised his hand. I don't know if Olanrewaju would like to unmute himself and ask the question now.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Olanrewaju.
Okay. Thank you very much for everything, and thank you for the presenters. So I typed my question in the chat box, but I can go on with it now. So I have three questions, so I would just state them. The first question is if I'll be going for masters first before PhD, so will I be allowed to do OPT at these different levels, like go for masters OPT, then go for PhD OPT again before considering H-1B or any other part. Then the second question is what happens if, like, when Glory was trying to explain the 90 days unemployment period, so I didn't get that. If it happens that the 90 days you didn't get a job, what will happen? Then the CPT, is it the summer internship? Is it still the summer internship, or it can be done in fall or spring if you carry your lecturers along or you carry the school along? So those are my three questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Olanrewaju, for the questions. I think I can provide answers to them based on my knowledge. Number one, you can do OPT at every education level that you have. You can do the master's OPT, and also you can also do the PhD OPT. Uh, Only that if you do a master's and then you did the OPT in the master's level, if you go and do another master's, you are not entitled to another OPT on the same education level. But if it is a different education level, you are entitled to do the OPT. Then the second question you asked, if the 90 days elapse and you don't have any employment, you are running out of status. That is the meaning. So what people do most time is to find a place to volunteer. So if you are doing a volunteering role, even while you are still looking for your dream job, that is fine. But you just don't want to leave everything, to chance for the 90 days ultimatum that you have. Once the 90 days elapse and you don't have a job and you didn't feed in USCIS of your current job status, they assume you're out of status. The third question you're asking about the CPT. Yeah, you can do CPT at every, like in any of the semesters, right? Most people do the summer internship and they use CPT. I did uh my internship in the fall, last fall, and I used the CPT. So as much as you carry your faculty and your international student office along, that is fine. I believe that provides answers to your questions.
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Then Akinwale Gunkoya is asking who are e-verified employers? So basically, I think these are, I think the US government has a list where you have all the companies that are verified, by the US government. And most of these companies, some of them file for H-1B, some of them do not file. But you have to make sure that your company is a verified company, not just one small one small establishment out there that is just looking for cheap labor. So you must be sure that this company is verified by the US government and they can sponsor you for work visa. So those are the e-verified employers, like the big guys, Intel, uh, Goldman Sachs, SI Young, and the likes of them. Most of the companies are actually, like, the big guys are e-verified. So you want to check out uh, to be sure that these companies are e-verified before you move on. Yeah. Then you asked about uh, doing another master's. Yeah, I've answered that question. You can't get OPT twice on the same education level. So is there any possibility of permanent resident visa for an international student? Yeah, of course, there are a lot of ways to get a permanent visa. We have the EB1, EB2 employment, and even the H-1B2 can lead to permanent residence, as the case may be. So there are a lot of opportunities for that. Yep. So I would like to also call up. Let me look at the queue. Henry Makinde. Henry Makinde has a question. Henry, would you like to unmute yourself to ask the question?
Yeah, thank you, Damilola. Thank you, the presenters. My question is, when does it actually make sense for a PhD student to start CPT based on the calculation that after the PhD has 5 years? So if you start your CPT from the first year before the fifth year, you have already done like 1.5 years. So when does it make sense for a PhD to start CPT before the OPT? And it the second presenter talked about 85,000. Is the 85,000 a general for the US or is state based? Yeah, so that's my two questions.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. Let me see if I can answer them, and then if I don't provide the full answer, how you can assist me. For the CPT, as a PhD student, the criteria before you can do CPT is that you must have done 1 full year, one full session as a full-time student, meaning that you must have done fall and spring semester before you can be entitled to CPT. So after you have done 1 full year, you can go for CPT at any point, during your PhD program. But don't forget that once you do once you do a full year of CPT, you are not entitled to OPT again. So some folks will only go for maybe CPT. I mean, summer internship, for instance, twice during their PhD program. Maybe summer internship like maybe 2 months or 2.5 months, and then 2 times that's like 5 months. And if you do 3 times, that's like maybe 7 months, and that is good enough. So far, you don't go beyond, the 1 year restriction, which nullifies your OPT eligibility. I think you are fine. So you also want to carry your advisors and your faculties along too. Some faculty might have issue with you going for internship every now and then because it also impacts your research, your PhD research. So those are the things you also want to consider. Just do well to have that conversation with your faculty and be sure of what you want. Yeah. Then for the H-1B, I guess the H-1B salary expectation is based on the USCIS discretion, not really a state thing. Or Ayodeji, can you provide more
So
comment
I
on
think is it for the cap, right?
for the amount? You was talking about the $85,000
Oh,
visa.
it's not. That's like the cap, the number of visas made available, not
Oh,
like
okay.
the salary.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not states wise. It's like general. So it's 5,000 for all of the people who are restricted to cap. But if you're not restricted to cap, then you can just get your visa. Usually, I think the start is an average of over 200,000 people apply every year to H-1B. So out of that, they select 85,000. So that's like less than half, 50%. So it's not by state. That's like the general number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much, Ayo, for answering the question. Yeah, I think Ibidapo Samuel also has a question. Ibidapo Samuel, would you like to unmute and ask a question?
All right. Thank you very much, Tamrela. I just wanted the clarification. I heard from the little research I've done, I heard that for STEM majors, the cap for both CPT and OPT is 3 years rather than the 1 year. So I just need that clarification. What can you say about that, please?
Yeah, Ibidapo. So you should know that the CPT and OPT are kind of like almost like two different things. Now, for the CPT, we say that is the curriculum practica training, meaning that a training that you can do like outside the campus while you are still in the program, either masters or PhD, right? Or even either masters or PhD, and it can only go for 1 year if you still want to have entitlement to the OPT, which is the post completion uh, practical training after your program. So if you are doing CPT, you should be careful to to see that you don't exceed 1 year limit, or you don't go up to 1 year limit. Maybe like 10 months should be fine for CPT, and then you have entitlement to full package for the OPT the OPT program. So you should note that there are two different things per se. Then for us that are in the STEM, we have access to 1 year OPT and 2 years extension for the STEM OPT. So that makes it 3 years for those that are in the STEM. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, I do. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the next person in line is Akinwale Ogunkoya. Akinwale Ogunkoya, you can unmute to ask your question.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. So my question is, probably more like a clarification. I wanted to know, so I've heard a couple people say that if you do have a PhD during the time for the H-1B visa lottery, now you tend to be in this pool of very smaller amount of people, and so your selection probability tend to be slightly higher than just a regular pool. Is that something that is true for PhD, or is it quite similar for people who do have a master's, or is this much more like just a regular pool of selection? Also, I just wanted to clarify.
So quickly, Akinwale. So PhD and masters falls in the same category when it comes to H-1B visa registration and the cap thing. So you are entitled to the extra 20,000 visas available on top of the 65,000 for the regular bachelors. So with your bachelor's and your master or PhD, if you don't qualify or you are not selected in the master 20,000 cap, your employer or the representative can actually put you in the 65,000 lottery because of a bachelor's degree. So that's why you have a higher chance, whether master's or PhD.
Sorry, and then the bachelor's must be done here in the US, or you just must have a bachelor's degree,
You
regardless of
just must have a bachelor's. It mustn't be US.
Okay.
From an accredited university. Your transcript must be certified, and just the bachelor's you used in applying to the US universities, basically, for masters. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Hayo, for answering the question. I think we also have Olanrewaju Adewumi, who has a question.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. So my question is, sorry, I don't understand. Is the OPT and the H-1B, are they like mutually exclusive? Like if you are working, maybe you finish school and started your OPT with a company, you're working with a company for your OPT. So is it when you must finish your OPT before filing for H-1B, or it can happen as you're doing the OPT?
I can quickly answer that. So your OPT, you can, like I said earlier, H-1B is employer sponsored. So it is if your employer is willing to file for you anytime during your OPT, right? So you can be on OPT and your employer can decide to start filing H-1B for you. You can probably have finished OPT before they decide to file for you. So I'll say if you're in OPT and you're working for an employer and you know they're going to file for you, you have an idea of the application window. When it gets closer, let them know or reach out to them and be like, oh, what's going on? Are you trying to file for me or not? Because, so that is how it's done. So it's not really yours to like put yourself in the application pool. It is for your employer to do that. So if they are willing to do that for you, they'll reach out to you and they'll ask for the required document to do that. So if you know that your OPT is ending, please apply for STEM OPT while you wait for your company to file H-1B for you. If you don't do that, you'll be out of status and you don't have a choice than to go back to your home country. So once you just check your EAD card, apply like before the normal OPT expires, get into STEM OPT, be on that, then that buys you more time while your company files H-1B for you. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Thanks, Sayo, for answering the question. I think we can wrap it up at this point. We've answered, all the questions I can see in the chat box. I believe we've also done justice to the various questions that that you've raised. I want to appreciate you for joining the session this afternoon. If you have further questions, you can actually reach us at info@ansaofficial.org. I think we have that already in the chat box. I think we've already gone beyond the time limit. We planned for 1 hour, and this is already 11 minutes. So if you have further questions, you can just send a mail to us at info@ansaofficial.org. That is in the chat box, and we'll be able to provide further comments. Then if you also want to be a member of ANSA, you can check our website at www.ansaofficial.org/membership, and you'll be able to join ANSA there. For the recording, we'll do it to upload the recording on our various social media platforms, especially YouTube, so you can have access to the recording should in case you need to get some more information or make reference to some points that were made by our panelists. Yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining, and we look forward to having you in our next sessions. Thank you. Hayadeji, I don't know if you have any comments. Imobong, I don't know if you have any comment before we wrap up.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Imobong.
Basically, good message. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't have anything. Thank you guys for attending. Hope to see you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and have a great rest of the day.